Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective. What is going on, everybody? My name is Justin Fensterman, and as you see, I am back in the Fensty Studios. Power has returned, and the power of winning hopefully returning tonight right here at FantasyGuru.com. This is our extension of that Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern. I host Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Ray Flowers hosts Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Ray's with Jeff Manns on the Elite Sports Show on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. That's channel 87 on that dial there. It was great. I want to thank once again my friends from down the block, Amy and David, for allowing me to use their makeshift studio, a little bit of an office area for me to hang with you yesterday. And by the way, I'll just say this. When it came to one of the things I talked about yesterday regarding the fight between the Hornets and the Detroit Pistons, we finally have the answer we've all been waiting for, especially when getting ready to attack tonight's DFS NBA slate. Suspensions from that fight have been handed down, and a lot of teams, pretty much every team is in action tonight with the exception of a couple. But I said this yesterday, and I find this very interesting, that out of all the players, Isaiah Stewart coming off the bench and doing what he did with Miles Bridges there got him the biggest suspension of all, 7 games for Beef Stew out for the Detroit Pistons. Then beyond that, you've got Jaylen Duren, who gets suspended for 2. Here you have Moussa Diabate and Miles Bridges getting suspended for 4 games. Jaylen Duren was pretty much not only the instigator originally, he didn't start it, maybe it was Moose, but Jaylen Duren did his part too. And yeah, he got 2 games for escalating. I think he should have been slapped the 4-game or 2. So what this means is, in regards to tonight, that means for their respective games, that Atlanta-Charlotte game, which all of a sudden now becomes a little bit more interesting, and the pressure on whether or not Jalen Johnson is going to play, because now you've got a good portion of the front court out for Charlotte tonight, and Charlotte's been playing very good defense. But on the Charlotte side, this makes the wings look very intriguing too. Brandon Miller, Con Knipple. Those are guys that now we can look at in this matchup against Atlanta in this pace-up spot. And it's one of the few games that actually has a low spread, because let's look at this for tonight here. And by the way, I'll let you know what's going on right now when it comes to this show for the next little bit. And that's today. I'm going to be talking some NBA with all of you to start, but then in a little less than a half an hour from now, the Bosco, Rich Maletto, is going to stop by from FantasyGuru.com. Why? The Daytona 500 this weekend. And we're going to talk about all that we have as part of that MVP pass plan that we have that you can sign up for to get all things NBA, NHL, but racing also part of that too. We're going to talk a little strategy when it comes to betting on NASCAR, when it comes to DFS and what to look for, how to be able to identify things on our own before qualifying versus after qualifying so we can get on better lines. So we're going to do a little bit of a primer here. We're going to talk some DFS. And when I bring Rich on, Rich normally joins me every Wednesday. Armando Marcel joins me Tuesdays. Every Wednesday, Rich is going to be talking probably a little NASCAR, and then we're going to bring back the football in. But for now, it's going to be a lot of NASCAR. Why is that? Why? It's because it gives you a chance to win. And it shows other things that we have to offer besides the 4 major sports. And Rich does a great job with Sean Engel and Mark Hogan, for that matter, to figure out these drivers. And I'll say this, when it comes to racing, a few years ago, I won a couple of races in a nice DFS contest because of William Byron. Well, now William Byron's the guy. Billy Bye is the guy. Now, who else, which other drivers can we focus on? Maybe some of the cheaper ones. I'm going to talk to the Bosco, Rich Maletto, all about that in just a little bit. But want to thank all of you. Yes, Adam, I am back. It's good to see you too. I am on the DFS NBA article, and I have actually one bet in the kicker already because I saw a lower line and it was getting juiced up. And I said, you know what? We might as well get on it before the line shifts up. And you'll have to go to FantasyGuru.com to check out said play. Now, speaking of bets, because I always think about this, how much do I unveil And because at the same time, we're all trying to sell something. We all want to try to get people to be part of our community, especially different analysts across the board in this space. But I'll always talk about when I do well, and I'll always talk about when I don't do well. And the last couple of weeks, and I'll say this, so far the last few seasons, there's definitely a point where I go on a little bit of a lull when it comes to my betting. And that happens. It happens to everyone. Remember, I'm not just, swooping in once every 10 days and putting in a bet. I'm putting in bets 6 days a week. And with that, I want to make sure that our betting community remains active. That's what we do. We do alt-line parlays. Jeff Mans puts in alt-line parlays, which is the way to go. I do recognize, though, that there are certain sites that you play on where you might not have said parlay legs available or whatnot. But I try to also, and it's because of how I play too, I'm more of a singles prop better. I will put in those alt-line parlays. I have no problem with them. Like I said, the smart way to go because these lines are sharp. 4 or 5 years ago, let me tell you, I was betting overs and unders like it was freaking going out of style. And I was hitting so many overs. It just became, it was like back then, it was like the Kings, the Pelicans, they're playing, you bet the over. It was easy, but the lines weren't as sharp. Now they are. And that's where we have to be careful. So I have no problem, and I'm not going to run away from a slate when I'm on a lull. Maybe I'll put in a player or two less, but at the same time, I don't force anything. If I see myself in my record right now under 500, I'll say units are down. I'll say that. February has not been kind to me. We've been playing 500, a little over 500 ball for most of the year. February has not been kind to me. I do not run away. I do not even recalibrate and try totally different strategies. I stick to how I write. I stick to what I write, and I know that better times are going to be coming ahead. That's how it goes. With a sport like NBA, we can turn the page every day, and that's the beauty of it. So better times ahead. The All-Star break comes at a good time. What's going on, Tampa? Good to see you too, man. I wish I was in Tampa right now in that Florida weather, although I have some family down in Florida, and they're telling me it's like 40 degrees outside, so it's not much better than what I have here in the mid-Atlantic. But yeah, trust me, I don't run away from things. And I'm watching Discords too, by the way, and I see some of the comments that I get sometimes, especially after a bad night. And look, that's up to you at that point. It's up to you whether or not I give you all of what I see. I give you all of my evidence. People were upset about Mark Williams. Well, Mark Williams had been having good games, and then last night took a crap. Nothing I could do about that. 4-game slate, 3 of which had double-digit spreads. Where can we go? Good game environment, good pace-up spot. He did not come through. Didn't work out. Didn't get utilized much. Why? I have no idea. Because Dallas is easy, and that's the big thing there. And I'll just say, when it comes to the bets, I don't run away from that. My process isn't going to change, but I'm not going to start digging the hole deeper too. I'm not tonight, last bet before All-Star games, I'm going to put in 7-8 plays. That's not me. I'm very methodical with how I do things. Last year at the end of the season, we went on a very nice run to end the regular season and into the playoffs. Still time to turn it around, and that's what I'm going to do, and that's the plan. And go with what I know, and I'll say this. When it comes to certain lines with bets, I look for 5.5, 6.5 lines for bets. For props, I look in the teens. Last night we had Jabari Smith over 13.5 points. I didn't really see much I liked, but it was the only one. There was actually, I'll say this. There was another bet I was looking at too, also involving Jabari Smith, and that was his rebounds, because he had been rebounding more. And I noticed, because we were on Tari Eason for a little bit, that all of a sudden Jabari Smith's rebounding chances have been creeping up and up and up. And I started to see the actual rebounds start to shift a little bit towards Jabari Smith. And so I saw that. I didn't write it. Part of the reason was because I knew for that point prop that we had at 13.5, it was going to be a little bit of a sweat. Although when the first half ended, you thought that he was going to have 20 plus points. He went completely cold in the second half. He hit like one shot in the fourth quarter, and that was it. And it sucked. It sucks when it happens like that. But Yeah, I was also looking at the rebound prop for him too, so maybe that's something to watch. We got a little bit of a rematch tonight. Let's face it, what can the Clippers actually do here? Because they don't really have that much toughness in the post anymore. So that's why tonight is going to be a little bit rough, because not only do we have a 3-game variance between FanDuel and DraftKings, but we also have a bunch of injuries that are on the table. We've got this Utah Jazz team that they're originally resting Markin, and the league probably called and said, no. So now apparently he's not out for rest anymore. He's going to be playing, but will he be playing? With the Jazz, the big thing is it's very telling. And with this game right here, the problem is when you look at where it is in the slate, and this is only, by the way, on DraftKings, so maybe more of a reason to even play FanDuel, or if you want to play a little bit of chicken regarding it, you can. But it's a late starting game. The tell with the Utah Jazz is who's in the starting lineup and who's not. Because right now, when it comes to full trust for the Utah Jazz, there is one player that comes to mind, and his name is Isaiah Collier. And that's because I think Collier can volume produce enough assists and score enough points to still be able to hit value, sub 8K. That continues to happen for another game. He's going to be coming out of the All-Star break, 8K plus. And I wouldn't be surprised. We're seeing a lot of double-digit efforts from him on the assist front. So if you're playing DraftKings tonight in the 13-gamer, then that's a decision you're going to have to make, because with Sacramento, it's not going to look good for them. Although, from a DFS standpoint, not a defensive standpoint, DFS, this is where we can look at Sacramento a little bit too. And look, Jaren Jackson being there is going to make a difference. But we can still look at guys like Raynaud, and we can still even look at we can look at Nick Clifford off the bench, potentially. That's an area where we can still look and play to the pace of Utah, and we can attack them. And let me tell you this, Jaren Jackson Jr., there are 48 minutes in a basketball game. I wouldn't be shocked if Jaren Jackson Jr. was capped at 25 the rest of the season, because of how the Jazz are trying to escape the tanking and getting hit with fines for resting players without cause. So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So if you're playing on DraftKings tonight, I will write up some Jazz players, but these are plays that I'm writing that will likely be just GPP only. Collier, I think, is okay, but they're going to take their guys out for the fourth quarter. And I was listening to the presser the other night. There's no remorse there. They know what they're doing. That's the problem. So let's look at the rest of the slate and see what we're dealing with right now when it comes to injuries before I welcome on Rich Maletto. I'm excited to talk NASCAR. I've been trying to get even more into, because I don't mind. It's, to me, yeah, you're watching everyone turn left a bunch, but I don't mind, especially the end of a race. The adrenaline rush is great, but also been watching a lot of, besides NASCAR and trying to get more into that, watching a lot more golf too. So make sure you go and check out Tyler Rodriguez for the Pebble Beach there. He has all of that there. And Tony, good to see you, man. Thanks. It's very much good to see you. And thank you very much there. Look, I'll admit this, Tony. I'm very happy that you won. I know that my core four, outside of Wembanyama, which I was so happy that I stuck with that, but I know that my core four last night was cold. And I know that sometimes there are people that like to kind of put the dagger in a little bit more when I have those cold DFS nights. And last night was one of those nights. And then I see the jerky screenshots. This comment, Tony, I just want to say means a lot, Tony, from Wisconsin. So I'm glad that you were able to win. And let me tell you this here, the $30 there, that's a few meals right there. As I always say, joking, but I'm kind of serious about it. That's 3 Chipotle dinners right there. And unless you're a very big eater like me, where I'm going to finish the bowl and the entire meal, just about everybody I know saves the leftovers. So that turns it into another meal right there. But you get 3 guaranteed Chipotle meals as long as you don't get guacamole, because they hike up the price like crazy there, like gas. It's nuts. No, I'm sorry. Gas is probably less expensive than guacamole at this point here. I kid, kind of. Let's talk about some of these other games, though. But I really see that right there, that message, Tony. I just want to say that's why we wake up every day and we do this. That's why we're in this battle against the book, against the DFS sites. We get slapped in the face at times. It doesn't matter. We're back up there, because let me tell you, that's not how I just handle the NBA when it comes to DFS and sports wagering. That's how I handle my entire life. Okay, if I've ever had a door slam me in the face, no matter how hard it hits, no matter how hard it might knock me back, that next day with blood running down the eye, I am going to be there at that door knocking again. That's what it takes. It takes heart every single day to be in this battle. If you swoop in once every few weeks and you're on a good night, that's great. But if you're in the battle every single day, you know we're learning stuff. And by the way, you see it at the bottom of the document right there. That's why Watch Along Wednesday exists too, because I want to be there for you. I want to help. I want to work through some of my betting struggles with you. Maybe you're seeing something that I'm not seeing. Maybe you're seeing a few lines. Hey, Fensty, I'm looking. Please, I get asked, and I have no problem giving credit if I ever write up a bet that was inspired or brought to me by someone in Discord. And I'm like, wow, this makes absolute sense. I'll give credit. I don't care. I want us to win. I want us all to win. If I have, let's say, an 0-2 night, but Jeff hits both of his alt line parlays, to me, that's a winning night. Even though I lost, even though I feel like crap about it, even though I hold myself to this impossible standard and have my entire life, it's still a winning night. We all root for each other. We all work together. I see it. I see it in the Discord too. But that right there, look, on a cold night, being able to hit on a 4-game slate where 3 of my 4 that I ended up having in the queue, because I'll say this, and I got to give Mike Sillo, Mike the Beard, some credit here, because Mike the Beard's been doing a little bit more NBA. I'm just going to say because I didn't know what I was going to do sub 6K last night, because there's either the Laker value in a horrible matchup, which I ended up having to go to by default, or I go with someone who isn't in the best matchup, but could be in line for burnout minutes if the Knicks did their job and were able to beat up on Indiana, which they were not. That was a close game. Indiana, I mean, there's some games where the Knicks are able to overwhelm them, but Indiana knows how to play this Knicks team. And Jarris Walker would have been great. Jarris Walker would have been excellent. Mike the Beard, he was in my write-up, but I didn't even think of him really as a core. And it just made sense because at that point, he had the safe floor. He then is sick. He gets ruled out. So now I'm stuck, and it's like, okay, where do I go with the Lakers here against a very powerful Spurs defense? Well, you'll go with LaRavia. He should at least get shots, right? Just doesn't work out sometimes. The Knicks in that Pacers game. Yeah, I thought the Knicks were going to be up and up and up, and then they were going to kind of cool off at the end of it too, because let's not forget, the Knicks do have a game, and they want to stay healthy. They do have a game. So at that point, I thought, okay, they got the game against the Sixers. Joel Embiid's probably going to play. They're going to need their guys in. So I was a little bit hesitant at making someone like a Josh Hart, who's done well in matchups like these and did it again, a core play. He was in the write-up, though. So the reason I explain all this, by the way, I'm not making excuses. It's because I live this stuff. And when I mess up, I feel like there's always a lesson to be learned. And I say it to my kids all the time, when they're, oh, hey, be careful doing that. Be careful walking on that step like that. Oh, why, Daddy? Why? I get asked why a million times. And then one day, unfortunately, my kid trips off the step and everything and then gives me that look. And I'm like, well, that's why. That's why. That's our job here, to figure out with these teams the why, the also how the rotation shifts when it comes to long-term injuries or even suspensions here. So let's go matchup by matchup here, and I'll talk about what I'm looking at in this game. So Orlando, I've been picking on Orlando surprisingly a lot, and Milwaukee is not exactly the most appealing team. Although I will say this, the guy like Kevin Porter could be a little bit more interesting tonight in this matchup against the Magic. The one thing I fear with Orlando, because Milwaukee ultimately, to me, not that strong of a team without Giannis being in there, Orlando's defense has stepped up over their last 5 games. I have been very critical of their defense, and that's because it frustrates me. I love this Magic team. And when I didn't think I could love it more, they trade for Desmond Baines, one of the Elite Mafia's favorite players and most profitable players from last year. And I'm like, wow, they just got themselves a low-end B-lister talent to add to their already core. That's great. That's incredible. He can be a solid combo guard, everything like that. It's incredible what the Magic are doing here. And it kind of stumbled out of the gate. Then Paolo gets hurt. Then Franz Wagner gets hurt. This is what life has been like in Orlando the last couple of years. Suggs gets hurt. So they haven't been able to stay as a full unit. And when they had to get rid of KCP, that's where I was shocked, because you could have offered other pieces. You keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope for that defense still. But now Orlando's defense has gotten a little bit better. So I am willing to go in a little bit more. And I'm sure Paolo will be in the write-up. He's on the big board right now, but he's very high priced. But that's where we can look at maybe a Desmond Bane tonight against the Milwaukee team that's going to struggle. He'll be able to get open looks. One of the things I've noticed about the Magic, about the Bucks rather, they're very shifty. So they shift to a side a lot. So if someone's going to be open on the other side at an elbow, they're going to get high percentage shots. I don't see, unless I'm missing something here, and I'm looking at it right now because we're going to be getting injury updates up the wazoo here. I don't see whether or not Franz Wagner should be on a minutes restriction. He played 17 minutes in his first game back from injury. I don't think he's getting more than 20 in this game. So I do think, and people thinking that Wagner is going to be back and play a lot more minutes this game, maybe that takes down some of the ownership of guys like, let's say, Bane, Banchero, someone that continues to impress, and now he's priced up a little more. Jaylen Suggs, who's a big-time component to this offense here. I was wondering if maybe they were going to lean off him a little bit to try to keep him healthy, because Anthony Black has been a solid role player for this team. He has. And so I thought maybe they would kind of give him a little bit more love. Nope, Jaylen Suggs is back, and now that Wagner's back, that means a guy like Anthony Black becomes a little bit more dangerous to start. If I knew that Orlando could win this game, which can they win by double figures? They can. Can I guarantee? I thought that Knicks Pacers was going to be a little bit of a blowout, and it wasn't. So that's why I got to be careful. But this game does have a 10.5-point spread with the money on the Magic covering. So that's something to think about. And maybe a guy like Anthony Black, even on a slate this large, can have some GPP appeal. On the Bucks side, like I said, the one player that I'm going to be probably looking at is KPJ, Kevin Porter, and Ryan Rollins being questionable now. I like that a lot for Kevin Porter's usage. So there are not a lot of other guys that they can turn to here. Kevin Porter is going to be getting a lot of shots. In fact, over his last few games, since coming back from injury, Kevin Porter's actually taken 14+ shots, 19+ over his last 2 games. The rebounding has been there. The assist production has been there. And he's sub 8K. So an intriguing mid-price target if Ryan Rollins ends up sitting, especially here. Let's move on to another game that has a double-digit spread. And this one may be the most dangerous on the slate, and that's Washington-Cleveland. And here's the deal. We all know about the Wizards' struggles and everything like that. But then they shock you. Then they'll play a team well and go into the fourth quarter somewhat still in range, and then they'll fall apart, and that keeps starters in a little bit more. Now, with a 16.5-point spread, can we pay $9K plus for Harden and Mitchell? To me, if you're going to do it, it's GPPs, and you're looking at someone who I think will have the ball a little bit more. And to me, that's probably going to be James Harden, with Mitchell getting featured as the scorer, so a little bit more. So that's probably where I'd go with that. And also, Harden is a little bit cheaper too, if you're going to go that direction. For me, I'm immediately thinking about maybe a guy like Tyson who can be effective, although he, at this point, with Mobley still out, he might also lose some minutes too. Do I think that a guy like Jared Allen can volume produce? I think he can in a matchup like this. There's a lot that turns me off about him in his game, but with no Mobley against this Wizards team, he should be able to smash there. Here's the game. When you talk about smashing and mashing, here's a game that I want to take advantage of. The problem is we don't know about Jalen Johnson or Dyson Daniels. Once I do, we can then figure this out, because now there's no Moose, there's no Bridges. It's more no Moose, which I like that for the post play for Atlanta at that point, because then all of a sudden Okonkwo becomes a little bit more intriguing, even though the pace is working against them. And then, a guy like, let's say, Nickeil Alexander-Walker becomes a lot more valuable and spends a lot more time with the Rock if Dyson Daniels is out, and especially if Jalen Johnson is out. So these are big things we're going to have to watch for. Like I said with Charlotte a little bit earlier, I think that both Brandon Miller and Con Knipple are absolutely in play in this matchup. Nice pace-up spot for them. And with other guys out, maybe the spread has it as a 4.5-point spread so far. But, Charlotte can probably beat them up a little bit if Daniels and Johnson don't play. That spread's going to go up and up and up. So we have to kind of prepare for that. But I still think those guys are priced fair enough where we can trust that. LaMelo Ball, that's a little bit of a different story here. Then we go to Chicago and Boston. Now, this is a game where I'm trying to just think of reasons not to write up Jaylen Brown, but because he's very expensive. But I just feel with this Bulls team, it's going to be hard for the Celtics to not be up double figures the entire game. Jalen Smith's looking like they're not going to play. The Celtics have the Bulls center. Now, the Bulls don't really have front court options, and that's where guys like Vucevic coming off the bench will be critical. But if the Celtics are up a big amount, then Vucevic isn't going to play the 30 minutes. So I still think Vucevic is in play. I'm going to probably write up Jaylen Brown because I think that if anything with Jaylen Brown, with the Bulls playing as fast as they do, it's a major pace-up spot. The rebounding has been there. He spends some time with the ball. I think that if the Celtics are up big, it's because of Jaylen Brown. And that's why it is for the most part. But I'm not thinking Derek White is going to come out of the woodwork and have himself a career night. No, I think Jaylen Brown in this type of matchup, a 13.5-point spread, I think he's safe as a volume play for GPPs. For cash, a little bit more risky. For cash, I wonder if maybe Vucevic is the answer, but it's not like the guy is priced at $6K. We're paying above $7K for him. So we're going to have to remember that we got to think of what he can do in 28 minutes because the Bulls don't have the firepower without Josh Giddey to be able to keep up with Boston's offense. They just don't. But because they play so fast, the Celtics can score quickly. That's kind of the way I see it, and some of these guys can volume produce. On the Pistons-Raptors matchup, so now we have a few questions here. Jakob Poeltl may play, has not been ruled out yet. But now we have no Stewart, no Duren. So that takes a lot out of the post right there. And it makes me start to wonder about a guy like Scotty Barnes. And if now all of a sudden he's worth the price of admission too. And maybe we start paying up for these Raptors options. Because here's the deal. Detroit is still favored on the road, but the Raptors defense can come to play. They're healthier now. So that'll be interesting to me what ends up happening with the Raptors injury situation. But I think a lot of those guys are now in play because of it. I mean, Quickly is very up and down, but even the guys up front, like I think of a guy like a Tobias Harris, and all of a sudden he becomes more interesting here when you take a few guys out of it. There's no Ron Holland, too, in this matchup. So that's 3 front court players missing. Asar Thompson becomes an intriguing value. Maybe even someone we look at because we've looked at Asar Thompson for rebounding props, and he's actually been one of our more profitable players this year, and that's because he can grab them in volume. One time, he grabbed like 0 rebounds. We had him over 5.5, and he grabbed 0 through the first 2 quarters and then grabbed 6 in the third quarter alone. And I think he ended with 6. That's Asar Thompson for you. That's what he does. But there are going to be open rebounding chances now for Detroit. Also, someone we can look at Detroit tonight now that we know we have no Jalen Duren in this matchup. Look, the Raptors are a little bit damaged up front too, but now someone that we can look at is Paul Reed, who over his last couple of games, he has been strong, but now Paul Reed has been priced up. You were getting in the last couple of days in the 4K range. Now he's 5,500. So I think that he's a decent option to pay to spend the 5,500. Is he core play material at this point? We'll have to wait and see. I had to decide on that to see if there's anybody else that's cheap that has a high ceiling, but Paul Reed definitely becomes more interesting here. I mentioned Tobias Harris, and he is who he is. Just when you want to invest in him, all of a sudden he kind of goes away. The one thing I will say about Tobias Harris is that he has been rebounding a little bit better. So it's not just the scoring, it's just the shooting has been very erratic. Every other game he's shooting in the 30 to 35% range, but at least we know that with those guys out, his minutes, which are always safe in a close game, he'll play 35, but his shots are also safe in this game because with no Duren, there needs to be front court play. This also, and I normally wouldn't even attack him here, but this also makes things more interesting for Cade Cunningham because remember, Duren will pass from the post, and so now Cunningham becomes a little bit more interesting here in this matchup. And after seeing what he did against Charlotte, now against Toronto, that's something that I'm very interested in. And now with him having more time with the ball, more rebounding chances, that should help up his potentials a little bit too. And he will be in the write-up tonight. Toronto isn't the easiest matchup, but Cade Cunningham is one of the best guards in this league. And with Cade Cunningham being one of the best guards in this league, that's an area we can trust when you have half your front court out or most of your front court out at this point here. Outside of that, when it comes to some of these other matchups, which I'm looking at tonight here, and I'll have the article, I'll have the write-up and everything like that. And then I will be in Discord. I'll be back tonight. I want to thank Armando Marsal for helping me out and subbing in for me in Discord last night. Tonight, I will be back in Discord, and then we'll be there for Watch Along Wednesday. Other games that have lower spreads, the Knicks-Sixers is going to be a lower spread game, but that's also going to be a very slow-moving game. That doesn't mean we can't take advantage. I'll say this, coming off of game 2, Tyrese Maxey is still very intriguing to me. To get to the Knicks, you get it through guard play. We saw it with Andrew Nembhard. Tyrese Maxey is someone that I'm definitely looking at tonight. Other low spreads, Nets, Pacers. We're going to look at some Nets value because the Pacers play fast, and they played last night. Portland and Minnesota, we'll have to see what their injury situation is, but with Minnesota, I'm definitely interested in attacking Portland's front court tonight, so we'll have to see kind of where we go there. Then we have the Clippers, Rockets, and I hate that the NBA has been doing this, but they played last night. They're playing again tonight, but we have to view it as exactly the same unless we get new injury update information because the Clippers just don't have the strength to keep out Houston. That's really what it just ultimately comes down to with this Rockets team. And like I said last night, we were singing the blues with Jabari Smith, but both those guys Smith and even Şengün can have good games tonight in the matchup. And then finally, the last few games remaining, Memphis, Denver. We can take advantage of Denver, but that game is a 13.5-point spread. So while Nikola Jokic is in an incredible matchup, you got to expect that he's going to be able to volume produce, and he's not playing full minutes here. There's nothing that Memphis can do to stop Denver. This is almost one of those games where I would almost I don't like taking the 13.5. Unless Denver's shooting 20% from the field, I just don't see how Denver is not up by 18 plus most of this game, or at least most of the second half. So we'll have to see how all that works out. The Thunder, you know the deal with them, no SGA, but the Phoenix Suns are a very hard team to attack. I'll probably be off of them, although Phoenix did play last night, so maybe look at some value plays there. On the other side, would I give Devin Booker a look? Probably not. Would I give Mark Williams, who burnt us last night, another look? Interesting. Maybe I would. Maybe I would. The Thunder give up a lot of boards, so that's where we're looking for this slate. Let's flip it over from the hardwood to the track. And with that right there, bringing in one of the masters of ceremonies at fantasyguru.com. He does football and racing coverage for the site. Joins me every Wednesday. It's the Bosco, Rich Maletto. Rich, Daytona, baby. You ready?
Daytona's upon us, man. It's here. We got cars on the track today.
So, dude, why don't you let everybody know first what you have going on, you, Sean Engel, Mark Hogan, the Marlin, what you have going on the website to prepare for one of the more popular sporting events in general of the year.
The Great American Race, right? We have, for the first time ever, we are moving I don't know if it's temporary. I'm hoping it's more permanent, but we're moving the Race Guru Thunder Hour podcast to a live stream tonight. So for anyone that wants to tune in 8 Eastern tonight, like where you normally go for the coaching stream and all that, we will have the Racing NASCAR Thunder Hour stream where you can interact with us, ask us questions. throw out your thoughts and that sort of stuff. We're going to be talking all things Daytona. The interesting thing with Daytona, while it's the biggest race of the year in NASCAR standards, it's the Super Bowl, if you will, for NASCAR. It's a lot of luck, man. I like to call it Lucktona because there's at one point the winners. There was 5 in a row, I believe, where the winners were 35-1 or worse odds that came away with the win. Even though they've changed how the playoffs will be decided, I don't think that changes anything for the Great American Race. I expect it to be kind of wide open. I don't expect to learn much from practice. It was kind of frustrating because they actually yanked odds this morning. So you sent your questions, and guess what? There were no odds. And then they finally got them back up there shortly thereafter. They yanked them for practice, not shock. The whole setup's going to be different because of Daytona, but we will have, whether it be the stream or the podcast, you'll have that weekly. You'll have an overview article from me that just kind of touches on the week, what to expect, maybe some drivers I like, some early lines I like, some early lines that are, kind of off from the salaries, if you will. I mean, if someone's top 3 in salary for DFS and yet their odds are 10th, makes you scratch your head going, what does one side say that the other doesn't see type of thing, right? Especially so when DraftKings, right? They're doing both of them. So when the same site or platform has got them way different, we should take note. So there'll be some highlights in that. Sean will have his NASCAR Cup article. We'll have cheat sheets for all 3 of the series. They'll drop, before the race. Unfortunately, NASCAR hasn't changed quite the practice qualifying regimen yet. So oftentimes qualifying's literally an hour and a half, 2 hours before the race starts, which means we may or may not get updated race lines prior to the green flag dropping on some of these other series. DraftKings is the only one that's doing DFS contests for trucks and O'Reilly along with Cup. So be advised there if you can't see anything. I would suggest when checking lines, though, check ESPN Bet, check Bet 365. For some reason, I can't pull up their lines all the time because I'm not in a live market. They have some odds and bets that I can't always chase. Some qualifying lines, some top 10 lines. I'll highlight a guy, excuse me, at, hey, I like so-and-so for a top 10, but minus 120, not really digging the bet. If they were plus 120, plus 140, I would. Well, shop around. You may find at Bet 365, they have them at plus 140. That's happened numerous times. So that sort of stuff.
So, Rich, let's talk about betting for a second before we get into a little DFS strategy here. Because when we were talking, and I thought this was very interesting when we were talking off air about this, and that's placing bets early. I always wonder if, like today, I put in a bet for NBA. I rarely ever do this. I put in an NBA bet this morning that I saw, and I said, we got to get on this before the number changes and everything. Yep. But even me putting in the bet, I know there's still an automatic 12% chance that somehow X player that I put in for the bet could get ruled out. He's not designated at all, but just it's the day before the All-Star game. So let me
And you froze.
Okay, I'm back on just like that right there. My name is Justin Fensterman. Again, had my computer just crap out on me and update. This has actually never happened to me before on a stream. So I welcome back in my guest here, Rich Maletto. Rich, what's going on? I missed what you were saying from what all that happening about NASCAR and betting, being able to bet before qualifying, and if that's an advantageous way to go about it.
So, a couple of quick things. I know you were kind of concerned, hey, that player may not play. NASCAR, we get a little bit of a buffer in that anyone that's a charter, they're going to be in. So, the Austin Cendricks of the world, the Bubba Wallaces, we can take advantage of these early lines now and not fret about them making the race. They're going to be in the race. Where we would fret is, and I don't think practice, excuse me, will move the lines much. It shouldn't. If anything, any of the lines that move down from practice, sign me up, because cars running around, not in a draft, doesn't really matter. Without seeing practice, I don't know how much of these guys were drafting or not drafting. Nobody knows until you talk to them, right? But where I like to get on the lines, Daytona is different because we're going to have qualifying, then we're going to have the duels, which actually sets where they're going to line up for the race. Most weeks you have practice, you have qualifying. I love it when the lines go backwards after qualifying if I'm in on a guy, especially if the practice times kind of match up. They've gotten better, the books have. They know to look at some of this stuff, although I will say with the new car, practice times haven't been as indicative as they were 5 years ago. Qualifying has been a little more helpful, but some of our best bets, Roger Cruth at 80-1, moved to 66-1, and even I thought that was off, right? So we can take advantage, because I would argue that driver history, team history, crew chief history as much of an indicator of potential success as anything else. Recent history matters, but it's not end all be all. So one of the things I was saying about how some of the lines moved, practice had happened this morning. They pulled some lines. Couple of interesting things I noticed. Austin Cindric went from plus 1,600 to plus 1,800. Christopher Bell, conversely, went from plus 2,200 to plus 20, or plus 2,000. That was a driver I said was priced wrong as I was writing the article. Sounds like Vegas is maybe getting their stuff in order, because he's not going to be as outlandish as what it once looked like. The Corey Himes, who is not locked in, Chandler Smith not locked in, they're at plus 13,000 and plus 10,000. I kind of like them for top 10s. These are two guys that have history of doing well in their prospective series in the past at these types of tracks. They're with two teams that have historically had speed at these types of tracks. I think their odds are off. And what's going to happen, mark my words, Fensty, you're going to see Corey Heim and Chandler Smith, depending on how the duels run. I will not be shocked that both their betting lines go from that plus 10,000, 13,000 range down to plus 7,000. Like, I fully expect that. That's where they probably should be. They should probably be around the David Gillilan's and Noah Gregson's of the world at the very least. I mean, if you look at Corey Himes' teammates of Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, they're in the plus 2,000, plus 2,400 range. To have him at plus 10,000, I think is outlandish. The books are behind. It's always Heim time. If you've watched our podcast and you ask me, it's always Heim time. Corey Heim deserves a full-time ride. I've been saying Heim time before they were running with it last year on TV. The dude is better driver than a bunch of these guys that are already in cup cars. So I'm trying to be ahead of the curve on this.
So, Rich, let's flip it to DFS here for those that are going to be following all of yours and Sean's and Mark Hogan's content. Again, the Race Guru Thunder Hour live stream, that's going to be a lot of fun too. Rich, let's talk strategy here. What do you like to play better on, FanDuel or DraftKings?
I keep having issues with FanDuel, so I don't play much on FanDuel. That said, Sean always finds a solid edge on FanDuel. I'll give you a comparison. Willie B, your boy, Willie B, is top salary on DraftKings. He is fourth on FanDuel. Or third on FanDuel. Austin Cindric on DraftKings is like seventh. He is fourth on FanDuel. So FanDuel has 3 Penske drivers in the top 4 of pricing. If that tells you how FanDuel feels about everything. I typically play on DraftKings because they have more slates. FanDuel does not have a truck slate, does not do an Xfinity slate. There is an edge to playing FanDuel. I think it's easier to cash in FanDuel. The scoring's a little bit, or the pricing's a little bit different, but I play a lot on DraftKings. That's pretty much where I play exclusively because there's just so many more contests. I hate that I do it that way. I tell everybody to shop and look around, but I'm terrible at it. I want to be able to go and be able to do all three of my, like, for example, right now in DraftKings, you can reserve a spot for each of the dual races to the truck, the Xfinity, and the Cup race. Whereas on FanDuel, the only thing you can reserve is the Daytona 500.
Wow. Interesting. No, it's always interesting the differences between the two sites. And even talking to you and other analysts in the past, it seems like it's just completely different strategies. And then you stick with just one site versus the other. So that's what's great about the combo of you and Sean, with Sean being able to find the edges on FanDuel, you on DraftKings. So speaking of DraftKings here, the Daytona 500, a race that Billy William Byron, very comfortable with here. Can you fade him? Or, I mean, is ownership just going to be way too high? Or it's so early that it's kind of like with me with Nikola Jokic. Do you just eat the chalk?
I don't think he's going to be chalky. The problem is he's going for 3 in a row. I don't know of anybody that's won 3 in a row Daytona 500s. And mixed into this, Chevy's got a new body. We really don't know what this Chevy body is going to do in the draft. Some of the scuttlebutt early is the Chevy guys aren't real pleased. Now, I find it hard to believe that Chevy would go through all this practice and not launch something that's successful unless their goal was to really pick up slack, say at the 1.5 mile tracks or something like that, or short tracks where this new combination works better, creates a better balance. I always say that the reason I call it Lactona and Lactega, it's drafting. You can hide. The teams that have all the speed all the time, Hendrick has speed all the time, Gibbs has speed all the time. It's nerfed at these tracks, man. Doesn't matter. Everybody's capped at what they can max produce. And so it's all about drivability in the draft. And that's why historically I have found luck mid-qualifying teams. They don't seem to have the raw speed, but guess where they have the speed in the draft, and they drivability. Being able to drive the car when others are just on raw speed is a huge advantage at places like Daytona. Talladega's wider, so historically you chase speed over handling. Daytona's the opposite. It's a little narrower, and success is usually found with those that create a balance and find speed to go with the drivability. There's a reason that all the books are pushing the Penske's. I did find it interesting. We talk prop bets. They took down the head-to-head bets. I want those back. I'll see if they come back. They had group bets, but they also had team bets. And interestingly enough, all the favorites have like Denny Hamlin as the top spot or Ryan Blaney, all these guys. Yet Hendrick was the favorite to win at plus 330 with Penske next in line at plus 425. I found that interesting considering how the salaries were and how the odds were for all the Penske drivers. All 3 Penske drivers are plus 1,800 or better. They're all in the top 7 or top 8 favorites. They got 3 drivers. They got 3 of the top 7. And yet, meanwhile, their odds to win as a team is lower than that of Hendrick. Just seems odd. Granted, Hendrick does have Byron and Larson there in the top, but Bowman's not near there. And Elliott's even down by Cindric. So it's just very interesting how all that's kind of working out. But I tell you what, I will, because Byron is top priced in DraftKings, the odds of me using Byron are pretty much 0. And the reason for that, I'm going to chase place differential. That's all I'm chasing for DFS at Daytona and Talladega. I have cashed lineups literally 2 minutes before a green flag going, screw it, I'm just going to throw a lineup in based on place differential. Didn't even look at names, just looked at places, where they qualified.
Right.
3 out of 4 cashed.
Wow.
So, and if you look at the perfect lineups, they're going to have $20,000 left in their wallet for the slate. Right. You'll have the money for Byron if you want, but until we see the duels and we know where they're at, the chances of me throwing him in there are super slim. I'm more likely to build a lineup around the Corey Himes, the Chandler Smiths. I tell you what, probably the most owned driver I'll have, unless he qualifies too well, Todd Gilliland at 5,900. That guy will run up front, and he will be a top 10 finisher.
How do you follow at all what happened last week when it came to the race? Does any of that, what you saw, kind of trickle into your analysis, or different tracks, kind of different strategy?
Yes, no, yes, no. So let me explain that a little bit. I absolutely want to look at recent history, okay? Teams are constantly working on stuff. There's a cyclical thing. Teams that we see do well this first 6 weeks of the season, they're going to hit a lull, mark my words. And they may get it back before the playoffs or the chase. But this happens. Whoever you think are dominating the first 6 to 8 weeks, over the next 12 weeks, you're going to think it's somebody else at the end of it, okay? It's not a lot different than basketball and football in that regard, right? Whether it be injuries or what have you, you see that ebb and flow, okay? Where you have to be careful, there's nothing we can take from the race last week that applies to this. Completely different car. Like, legitimately, it's a different package, different horsepower, different aero package. It's completely different, okay? Different style of track. They never even got over 70 miles an hour, man. So we didn't see much from the car. Now, would I take stuff we saw last Wednesday and apply it to Martinsville that we'll see in a month and a half? Potentially. Flat track, narrow, short track, that sort of stuff, sure. But until we get into the season, I'll start noticing speed. Like, you'll start to see, hey, they were fast on the short tracks, not on the intermediates. Or, hey, they were fast at the short track and the intermediates over the last month. They must have found something. So all of these things come into play. But for this race, no. What I'm looking at is, how did they do at Daytona and Talladega last year, or potentially the last 2 years? How did they do at Daytona specifically? And more important than anything, I want to watch the duels Thursday night. The duels tomorrow night will give us a much better indicator of who's going to be racing. We'll know the cars no matter where they start, and that's where I'm hoping to get an edge. I'm hoping to see Todd Gilliland run up front for half of it, and then because guys want to get that win, they start shuffling back, and Todd Gilliland goes, I got a good car. I'm not getting in this fray. And he ends up sitting back in 29th. Oh, you will see every lineup I have except for one with Todd Gilliland in it at that point, because I never do all in on anybody. That's bad mojo. You'll stink a lineup. But if I have 10 lineups, he'll be in 8 or 9 of them, without a doubt, if that scenario plays out. Now, if he ends up finishing well and finishing third, he's going to be a contrarian play for me, right? I'm only going to use him as if I'm trying to get away from the chalk somewhere, because I still think he's going to finish well. He's so cheap. And even then, we're probably not going to get away from it. He's still probably going to be 20% owned, right? So again, I go back to, for this particular race, place differential, track history. That's basically the priority. And I know I'm kind of hammering the place differential, but shoot, Fensty. We are going to see numerous drivers that start outside the top 20 finish in the top 10. It's going to happen.
Right. I mean, look, and it's interesting because the pricing's already out even before all this. So you're kind of at the mercy of the pricing too, which kind of stinks in a way.
Yes.
Because if you have a very expensive driver who's all of a sudden starting in the back of the pack, probably doesn't suit them well from the price point standpoint.
But you know what? He'll be chalk. If William Byron wrecks in the duels and starts dead last, he will be the highest owned driver on the slate, even at his price point.
Gotcha.
And see, this is where Mark points out to me how things are the opposite of football and basketball. Like, he has always told me, in NASCAR, I'm chasing high-end chalk. In football and basketball, you almost want to do the opposite. You want to avoid the high-end, high-price chalk, right? Yep. In NASCAR, chase the chalk at the high dollars, get away from the chalk on the value plays.
Right.
And honestly, as I started doing that, it works so much better for me from a cashing standpoint.
So let me ask you this, then. Who do you think is going to win Daytona at this point? Knowing what
man, I hated the fact that Denny Hamlin was the favorite, because that's who I wanted to go with before I saw he was the favorite 9-1. And I have a hard time chasing favorites at a track like this. But given the whole story and everything that's gone on, I don't know. Denny Hamlin's had a pretty good run there. Denny Hamlin's near the top. And I got to give it, I know he's already kind of been there, but he's a guy that people are kind of liking. And for some reason, I can't get his name out of my mind. Austin Cindric.
You know what's funny? I was looking at Austin Cindric before, and then you mentioned him a little bit earlier, and I was looking at that price point. And while he's not, by the way, at 10K or 9, I mean, he's not the most expensive driver out there. I mean, he's at 9K, he's high priced, but he's not top of the top.
A good example along in those lines, Bubba Wallace. He historically runs great at these types of tracks. He absolutely is in play at 9,100.
Bubba Wallace there too. Also, yep, like you said, at 9,100 there on DraftKings. So beyond, let me ask you this then. Beyond William Byron, who you're saying you're probably going to end up fading here, what other drivers can you see, maybe another driver or two that you can see yourself just really not being on at all for DFS?
Depending on how qualifying goes, I would be hard pressed to use the top 3 or 4 in pricing.
Gotcha.
Again, because I'm looking at place differential, Joey Logano has a knack for running up front. Okay. He's going to lead some laps. He also has a knack of being super aggressive with the blocking, which what do you think turns into?
Crashing.
Big wrecks.
Yeah.
We're still going to get the big one. Okay. If the big one happens in the front of the pack, man, it's gone.
Yeah.
I would much rather chase pricing in that 7,000 to 9,000 range where I'm chasing. I mean, I'm not joking, Fensty. I will be targeting drivers that are going to start 25th, 29th, 30th, 35th. Those are the drivers I'm going to be looking for first. I will then balance my lineup out with maybe a contrarian play with a guy that starts up front that I think can hold that position. Maybe I'll throw because he looked good in the duels. Like if we see in the duels that William Byron is just lights out leading the pack, we may see that where someone has a real good feel of leading the pack and they're harder to get around. Guess what? Where they start doesn't matter to me. That will be a driver in my lineup regardless of price because I think they have a car that can hold the lead when not everybody has that. We've seen that in the past with Dale Jr. and stuff. So again, I'm not trying to be a cop-out here, but legitimately, if you want a shot at winning money this week, you've got to have to focus on place differential, and we've got to find the drivers that we think will move up. And we got to get lucky. That's the bottom line. We've got to avoid the big one. And there's no way, no matter what I tell you, there are too many drivers that are good. Bubba Wallace does a great job keeping his nose clean. He still gets collected at times. Joey Logano likes to be up front because it's hard to get in the big one when you're leading the pack, yet he seems to start it all the time being in second place. So it's it is the most, this is why I tell everyone, especially at these tracks, don't watch your lineups. If you really are a masochist, fine. But you're going to be pissed because at some point in the event, your lineup is going to be in first place. And then 20 minutes later, it's going to be in last place. And then what's going to happen with 10 to go, you think you're going to be in a cashing spot. And then something happens. And now we're doing a start and you have no idea.
Yeah.
It's not worth watching it unless you really like having your stomach put in knots.
Right. You know everybody, not everybody, you know a lot of people watch their lineups the whole time. I feel like that's part of the fun, the rush, you know? But then they're tweaking out and we see the like live Discord reaction. That's what we see.
We see the fallout. We see the crash out. And like I said, I don't know how many times I literally, with 8 to go, I'm like, I've got a top 3 lineup. I'm in first place. and then I don't, or I don't even cash. Like after the third time I've almost thrown my phone through the window, I was like, why am I doing this? Like that doesn't pay to watch. I guess now I have the confidence of, I know at some point my lineup's going to be in the running. I know enough that I see it happen. I know which drivers are in the top 5. I mean, the wife will ask me, how's it going? I was like, well, I've got 6 drivers in the top 10 right now.
Nice.
That's pretty impressive, right?
Yes.
Fensty, it happens for me weekly. Do you think they finish that way?
No,
never. I shouldn't say never, but I mean, you know, so it's like, why am I bother? I know that my lineup's going to be in first place at some point. Why bother?
You could have like a caution flag on like the last lap, and then it's like a restart.
Yeah, it happens a lot. It really does. And I don't think it's good for people's mental well-being, Fensty. I just don't.
So this is what you take away, everyone. You set your lineups and then you just stay off the app. Know like a driver or two that you have in play to root, and then just wait until the end and see if you see money in your account. Do not follow it live. Like, do not follow Rich on Twitter at Fantasy Bosco. do not follow DraftKings or FanDuel or wherever you play live during these races. Have your couple of core golfers in there in the back of your mind, root for them, and then watch yourself cash. Rich, again, what time is the live stream tonight for Race Guru Thunder Hour?
8 p.m. Eastern is when we'll launch tonight.
Nice.
My article should drop tomorrow sometime afternoon. It's still a work in progress because I've tweaked some things. I'll be going over with Rob Povia, and this week is, of course, different with Daytona. We'll have cheat sheets out before the races. I don't expect a cheat sheet out before the duels tomorrow night. I'll have some thoughts on the duels if we get some lines today. I'll have some thoughts on the duels themselves. Really, the duels used to be my favorite races to watch, so I just enjoy tuning in.
So, and Tampa here over says is asking about Rich with his NASCAR DFS, or does he do NASCAR betting? Rich does both, and our analysts do both too. So you'll see, and that's why, by the way, you sign up for that MVP plan, even for a month. Try it out here with Daytona coming up. Sign up and hang with the NASCAR folks there, because there's a lot of bets that are put into our Discord and posted on the site, and there's a ton of DFS content coverage, and you get the Race Guru Thunder Hour too along with that. So Rich does a little bit of everything when it comes to racing. The Truck Series, Rich is in on that too, along with Sean Angle and Mark Hogan. So get in, because the MVP plan, basketball, hockey, racing, among others, PGA, MMA, everything we have except for football and baseball, you get in that MVP plan. So the winning
for 12 months.
Yes. Winning never has to end. It really doesn't. And that's the thing, Rich. You could try it out for like $60 for a month. And then if you're like, I'm good, then okay, it's a month. But you're going to, and I always say it, I can't guarantee how many units you're going to be up or how much you're going to win, but I can guarantee you're going to learn something. From our NASCAR crew, like Rich, if you haven't today, you're going to learn something when you stick with our NASCAR crew, or any of us for that matter, because we explain the process so that you can learn it, understand it, and apply it yourself. For Rich Maletto, I'm Justin. Okay, everybody, I'm back once again. For Rich Maletto, I'm Justin Fensterman. We'll make sure I have this figured out when I'm back on with you guys next week for the stream. Remember, NBA All-Star Week is coming up here. Do not bet on the NBA All-Star Game. Just save your money. I'm going to figure out why my computer keeps shutting down on me. But thank you all for hanging out, for sticking with me, too. We have a great time here for Rich Maletto. I'm Justin Fensterman. It's Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by Fantasy